Okay, female black Jesus. Bet you didn't expect me to say that, or maybe you did because of the title. But here I am returning to the Piers Morgan well once again. I forget who it was. It might have been The Amazing Atheist, but someone recently said, you hate him, but it's like he has this negative charisma that's compelling. And I totally agree with that. He's smug, he's arrogant, but he's talented at drawing eyeballs. Not like with a pen and paper, but you know what I mean. But he did a segment on a recent episode where he talked about how, is it Cynthia Erivo, who played the Wicked Witch in Wicked, which sounds appropriate. I have no interest in Wicked, never seen it. But apparently she's going to be playing Jesus in an all-female performance of Jesus Christ Superstar at the Hollywood Bowl. And as a huge Doors fan, whenever I hear Hollywood Bowl, I automatically think of their album Live at the Hollywood Bowl, which is absolutely amazing, especially that version of the end. And a couple of quick fun facts. Jim was on acid that night during the performance, and Harrison Ford, yes, that Harrison Ford before becoming a famous actor, was actually one of the camera operators that night. He had a short stint where he worked as a kind of roadie / camera guy for the Doors. And before I play the Piers Morgan clips, I'll quickly read a little bit from a Forbes article. Wicked star Cynthia Erivo's casting as Jesus Christ in Jesus Christ Superstar ignited backlash on social media, but the musical has always been controversial. And I'll jump down a bit. Erivo, who recently played the messianic but misunderstood Elphaba Throp. I didn't know the Wicked Witch was a messianic character. I have no idea, honestly. Never seen Wicked, never listened to the music, I don't know. But says is confirmed to play the title role of the 2025 Hollywood Bowl production of Jesus Christ Superstar, which will run August 1st to 3rd in Los Angeles. And I want to stop to make a quick clarification or correction. I said that it was going to be an all-female production, but I don't know that for sure. Maybe it will, but I might be confused. I think I was basing that on the fact, and here's a Star Magazine article, that apparently back in 2020, she sang the role of Mary Magdalene in an all-women reimagining of the production, Jesus Christ Superstar, She Is Risen, which was released as a concept album. But the Forbes article continues, Jesus Christ Superstar, an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, has proved controversial with religious groups before. But the casting of Erivo provoked fierce online commentary. And for those of you who are younger and maybe not familiar with the musical, it originally premiered, well, I guess first it was a concept album released in 1970, and then the theatrical premiere as a musical was in 1971, and then it would go on to become a major motion picture. Yeah, the film version was released in 1973, same year as The Exorcist. And as the article points out, it's long been considered controversial. It's a retelling of the Jesus story, but has kind of a contemporary setting, contemporary costumes, well, for the time, early 70s, so basically everyone is dressed like hippies. And they do change some aspects of the story. For instance, perhaps most importantly, it ends with the crucifixion and burial, but not the resurrection, leaving the audience wondering whether or not within this version of the story, Jesus is actually the Messiah, or whether or not he rose from the dead. In fairness, I believe according to biblical scholars, the original ending of the Gospel of Mark didn't have a resurrection. It ended with an empty tomb. And the extended ending, which does include the resurrection, was supposedly a later addition or interpolation. And it might seem strange given that I'm an atheist, non-believer, whatever the hell you want to call it, and I'm not the biggest fan of musicals, generally speaking. Case in point, the fact that I know next to nothing about Wicked. But several years ago, at least, I suddenly got into both Godspell and Jesus Christ Superstar, and found myself really loving the music and the film adaptations, to the point where I dedicated either a single episode to both or covered each one separately. I can't remember. But that episode or episodes are still out there somewhere, and I still get comments on them to this day. But after all that yapping, let's finally get to the Piers Morgan clips.
The name of the new actor cast in the coveted role of Jesus Christ has been revealed, and well, it's not an actor, it's an actress. According to Hollywood's own Bible Variety, Cynthia Erivo, last seen playing the part of the Wicked Witch of the West in the hit movie Wicked, is to star in the new production of Jesus Christ Superstar. Needless to say, some religious commentators have expressed some surprise given the previously common held belief that Jesus was in fact a Middle Eastern man with a beard. So is this a case of creative artistic license or blasphemous cultural appropriation?
Well, at least Piers admitted he was Middle Eastern. I feel like there's a lot of Christians who still think Jesus looked like one of the Bee Gees, or maybe a young Ted Nugent. But one of the members of the panel was this guy named Ernest. You don't encounter that name a lot nowadays. The only other Ernest I can think of are Ernest Hemingway, Ernest P. Worrell. Anyway, if you watch Piers Morgan, you know how it goes. He has these kind of token leftists on, and I say this as someone on the left or who leans left. They're there to kind of make the left look stupid and get knocked around by the rest of the panel. If they even begin to make a decent argument, they get talked over or whatever. And that's usually especially the case with this guy, Ernest. So that's why I was really surprised when he made what I thought was a really good point about how, it depends. If it's a historical biopic, then yeah, it wouldn't make sense to have, a black female Jesus. And this clip is about 2 minutes long, so fingers crossed I don't get copyright dinged. Oh, and another pet peeve I have with Piers Morgan, there was a lot of unintentional alliteration, is the way he tries to play gotcha and the smug self-satisfied joy he seems to take in putting people on the spot. But once again, I was impressed. Ernest didn't seem to take the bait and he just gave a kind of measured response. But here we go.
So Ernest, my question for you is, so I want to play Nelson Mandela, okay, in a new musical version of his life. You good with that?
I mean, personally, I'm not. But
You're not?
I think that the
You're not
reality
good with
is
that?
I'm not, personally, no. I don't
Why?
think you're that
Well,
good
hang
of
on.
an
Okay,
actor.
so that's interesting. So why can't I play Nelson Mandela?
I mean, I think that he's a historical figure that people are familiar with. I mean, there are various
Sure.
variations of Jesus.
But I'm an actor.
We have been seeing in America
I'm an
various
actor.
white
I'm an actor. I've been in 10 movies. They've grossed $2.6 billion, the movies I've been in. I'm literally one of the biggest box office stars in terms of cameos in the history of movies. So I would like to play Nelson Mandela. Is your objection, be honest, my skin color? That he's a black icon, quite rightly. Is it the fact that I'm a white guy? Is that why I can't play him?
I mean, are you trying to make the correlation between Cynthia Erivo? I mean, you can argue that Cynthia Erivo playing Jesus is a gender thing.
Hang on. I'm going to come to that.
So which one is it?
I'm coming to
Which one is
Cynthia.
it?
I'm just
Okay.
asking you, on principle, is your objection to me playing Mandela the fact that I'm white? Be honest.
If it's a historical biopic, yes, because you're not.
Okay.
So therefore,
Second
yes.
question.
Because it's a historical biopic.
Second question. If it was a woman that wanted to play Mandela, how would you feel?
Historical figure-wise, if it's a biopic, it would be historically inaccurate, so no.
Okay, great. So you've established that you don't like people playing roles where they don't have the right skin color or gender, if we know who that role is. Who that person.
For historical purposes. Because Cleopatra, Elizabeth, Taylor playing Cleopatra was historically inaccurate, and I wasn't a fan of that.
And so I noticed a lot of people in Piers Morgan's comments mentioning the fact that Ernest brought up Cleopatra at the end and suggesting that having Elizabeth Taylor, a white woman, play Cleopatra was historically inaccurate. And I did an entire episode on whether or not Cleopatra was black. It was in the midst of, or in the wake of, that Netflix controversy where they made a docudrama about Cleopatra, and they cast a half-black, I think she was a British actress, as Cleopatra. But the actress tends to present black, and they even gave her an afro. So they seem to be implying that, or trying to imply that Cleopatra was black. And as someone who's had a love of ancient history since I was young, especially the classical world, ancient Rome, ancient Greece, and I used to have a fascination with Alexander the Great, I knew that, when Alexander the Great died, a number of his generals were left ruling over certain parts of his empire. For instance, his general Ptolemy was left to rule over Egypt, and he founded the Ptolemaic dynasty. And Cleopatra was the last in that line. And in fact, I think she was technically the last pharaoh. And Alexander the Great was a Macedonian. And by most scholars, hopefully it's not too presumptuous to say that, consider the ancient Macedonians to have been Greek. They spoke a Greek dialect, etc. I believe they claimed Greek ancestry. There were some other Greeks, I think the Athenians especially, who considered them barbarians. But as far as we know, it's safe to say the ancient Macedonians were Greek. They were a Greek civilization. And the Ptolemies in Egypt emulated the custom of the Egyptian pharaohs of basically inbreeding to keep the bloodline pure. And a horse may or may not have jumped the fence here and there, but essentially Cleopatra would have been of Macedonian ancestry. She would have been Greek. So a white actress playing Cleopatra, depending on what her specific European ancestry is, I guess, wouldn't be that far off, especially if they're of Mediterranean ancestry. And that Cleopatra video ended up being one of my best performing episodes ever. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, I agree with Ernest that, yeah, I think, it matters if you're talking about a historical biopic or a fantastical reimagining like Jesus Christ Superstar. I mean, you've already got a bunch of hippies running around singing. You got Roman guards with machine guns. There's no resurrection. I mean, at that point, does it even matter whether or not Jesus is a black female? Who cares? In my opinion, what I'm saying is, Jesus Christ Superstar is already such a kind of subversive reimagining. What's it matter? I think at the end of the day, it's a free speech issue. They have a right to put the performance on, and Christians have a right to be or not be offended by it and, voice their opposition on social media or whatever else. If you don't like it, don't buy a ticket, But with that being said, I've been putting a lot of content out recently and I'm tired. So until next time, as always, thank you for listening and or watching. All right, depending on the platform.